There's really such an incredible amount of blessing that can come out of just treating people right.
It's easy to want to focus on a pain point, but where you feel pain is not always what you're trying to solve.
We have to be proud to put our logo on all of our work. And if we're not, we shouldn't do it.
So if I go do really hard, scary things on the weekend, I come back to this thing and it seems pretty normal. I'm not going to die today doing this job.
Being able to make mistakes, sometimes expensive mistakes, is important. And without the ability to do that, it's hard to learn and to take risks that can be highly beneficial risks.
I feel like we just captured a breaking news moment. How did those sales go? What happens in that situation then? Tell us about it though. What does that mean? Why'd you get into that? How do you use it? The Southeast has always been an intriguing solar frontier. While states like California and Arizona get most of the attention for their abundant sunshine, the Southeast has quietly been building a remarkable solar ecosystem of its own. Tennessee, in particular, is a fascinating case study. Despite having fewer incentives than some of the other states and operating in the shadow of traditional energy sources, solar has found its way into the region's energy mix in meaningful ways. What's even more interesting is how the Tennessee Valley Authority, or TVA, has played a pivotal role in this story. The TVA, established back in the 1930s as part of the New Deal, has historically been known for hydroelectric and coal power. But in recent years, they've become an incredible ally in renewable energy adoption. This evolution hasn't happened overnight, and it's taken visionaries who understand both traditional energy systems and innovative technologies to bridge that gap. People who can translate between these worlds, who have experience in manufacturing, engineering, and energy production, make the difference. These are the leaders who understand that solar isn't just about the panels themselves. It's about creating integrated energy solutions that make sense for the specific needs of communities and businesses in the region. This systems thinking approach is becoming increasingly important as we see rooftop solar now routinely paired with battery storage. 5 years ago, battery attachment rates of even 10% were considered impressive. Today, some installers are seeing 100% battery attachments with their solar projects, a complete transformation in how we think about distributed energy. Our guest today embodies this evolution. Chris Koczaja is the CEO of Lightwave Solar, one of Tennessee's pioneering turnkey solar installers. What makes Chris particularly impressive is his background. From his Six Sigma Black Belt certification that brings process discipline to everything he does, to his experiences at Caterpillar and in waste-to-energy technologies before finding his way to solar. Under Chris's leadership since 2017, Lightwave has navigated the complex Southeast solar market, working closely with the TVA and helping to push the industry forward. He's also been instrumental in Lightwave's involvement in the Amicus Solar Cooperative, a member-owned purchasing cooperative that helps independent solar companies compete with larger national players. Today, we'll explore what makes the Southern solar market unique, how Chris's diverse background shapes his approach to business, and what lessons other solar contractors might learn from Lightwave's experience. Welcome to When Life Gives You Lumens, Chris. We're excited to have you with us today.
No, excited to be here, Jason. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
I want to start out by continuing on the theme around solar in Tennessee. Right? So according to SEIA, right, the large lobbying organization, solar is only 1.56% of the Tennessee energy mix, about 900 megawatts of installed capacity. Most is just utility scale. And they claim that there are only like 50 installers in the state. So are those the numbers that are correct? And from your perspective, what is the solar market in the state?
So the correct answer is it's complicated. And as with everything, numbers can be very misleading depending on what you're looking at and where they're going. I think, highlighting a little bit of what you talked about with the Tennessee Valley Authority and its role. If you look at Tennessee, people don't realize that, the TVA is a federally owned utility. So we don't have a public utility, public service commission, anything of that sort that I can go to and say, hey, I'd like more solar. Let's do that. We don't have the RPS standards. We've got a federally owned and managed utility. And people may have seen recently that the board of the TVA is appointed and fired by the President of the United States. So there's very little that we can do here other than really foster organic trends. So if you look at kind of the past year is kind of interesting because it was a very heavy coal nuclear utility. And now if as recently as this year and as articulated in the integrated resource plan, they're making a huge shift to go solar and storage. So it's kind of an interesting place to be in that we haven't really had incentives. The last incentive program we had really died out in 2019. But now moving forward, the number of projects that are in the interconnection queue and that are scheduled to be installed are pretty large piece of really the generation future of the TVA. Now with the numbers themselves, it's kind of interesting too, because without a set program to register everything in, we have a bunch of behind the meter solar and storage systems that never hit the metrics. So there's a lot of installations that are here and that people are enjoying both from the residential through CNI, even in the utility level, that just aren't being seen in the numbers because there's no good place to register all this and pull that together. But from the installer perspective, it's been a tough go of it. I don't know if we're the pioneer or we're the survivor. You know, it's kind of one of those things when you get to the point where I've got no other choice but to survive. Let's do what we have to do and let's figure out how to make it through this. But on the other side, it's been fruitful for us as Lightwave. We've kind of one of the first here in the Valley and are using that to really kind of just parrot what we see as the future of solar storage, electric vehicles, kind of the whole electrification of society. I'll stop there because I know you have more things you want to dig into before I go off.
I think that's really interesting that you're saying that it's federally owned. Mm-hmm. The president of the United States, and we're not going to get political in this discussion, but he is making some changes rapidly. But the TVA is actually pushing forward with the renewables agenda that has solar and batteries as the focus. Can you tell us why?
And this is a unique partnership, and this will be a shameless plug. I run Tennessee, our local SIA chapter as well, and we've got a conference coming up this fall. It's very, very interesting because it is as much the TVA's conference as it is our conference, and it's a solar and storage conference. But they are on every panel. They're helping us plan the whole agenda because we've come together and realized that regardless of politics, so you say, well, let's leave politics out. Politics is out. It's just the numbers. That's what the numbers are saying is solar and storage have kind of made it to the point where it's just what makes sense. So that's integrated into their 30, 50-year view of what their generation mix is going to be as a big part of it. So invite people to go look at what was in that recently published in the last couple of months, integrated resource plan. And you can see just how much solar and storage they're talking about. And, we'll highlight that we were part of this, the process too. So we were on the working group for a year as an active participant and had a pretty big voice because of how much solar and storage was there. So it's neat because I highlight to other people, and we'll talk about Amicus in a little bit, that this is what I see as kind of the organic trend. So you look at, again, one of your questions on attachment rates, we've got 100% attachment rate for storage for our residential systems. That is where we see things going. We've been there for 2 or 3 years now. So I see our market as kind of the playbook of, hey, this is where things are going. These are the new problems and opportunities people are going to have. So kind of look at this as one of those examples so we can kind of project kind of what the future holds.
I want to keep talking about Tennessee and the TVA. I know that the founder of Lightwave, Steve, he was involved in dialogue with one of those groups, both of those groups, especially in the early days of solar in the state. Can you share with us about the relationship that was had, what those dialogues were about, and how did that influence where Lightwave has gotten to be today?
This is going to be a little bit of a long answer, but I think it'll be important for the listeners to kind of understand. My background, as you highlighted, I'm from Caterpillar, the big yellow machine company. I was power generation, both diesel, natural gas. In my world there, I did a lot of projects in the TVA territory. I was a territory manager for Caterpillar back then, looking at different generation, distributed generation, things of that nature. The world at that point in time did not see solar and storage as the future. They saw it as a niche. It's the, it's the green people, they're moving this forward. That's a whole different thing, but we're going down this other path. So it was through my career doing that. And then I left and was one of the first people at a company called PHG Energy, looking at biomass and waste to energy, that we were putting together different renewable energy systems. We were saying, hey, we've got biomass, we've got all these things we're throwing away. What if we reclassified this and we could make some energy out of it? And we had gotten pretty far along on some good pseudo prototype and some other early production systems when we were building one. At the same time, solar was going into the same facility. And I was so proud that we only had like 100 single points of failure in ours. And I look over the solar and it's just like, wow, this is easy. There's no moving parts. It's just sits there. It makes power. There's no emissions permits. It's just so much easier than what we're doing. And then at the same time, it's just serendipitous that Steve Johnson, the founder of Lightwave, was looking for someone to take Lightwave to the next phase of its life. So obviously Steve and I got together, and that's how ended up taking over Lightwave in its next phase. But Steve was also part of the Tennessee Valley Authority, Tennessee, during the mix of time where solar was just this niche technology. So it was much more adversarial at that point in time between really the utilities and the solar industry. Again, like you see in other areas of the U.S. right now, it's not seen as, hey, let's get together and figure out how to do this. It's like, no, we're mortal enemies. You can't do this. So coming into this, my view of the world was I got it. I saw how the tides have changed, the economics have changed, and there's more that we could do together, the utility and the industry, than there was us just fighting each other and beating ourselves up. So that's where, as Tennessee, we kind of took the approach that, hey, we're not going to agree on everything, but let's at least talk about the pieces that we do agree on. And once we do that, we can start to establish credibility in what works and what doesn't work. We have to be honest with that, to the point that we can start to really have some meaningful conversations moving forward. And that's where we enjoy right now a really great relationship with the TVA. Not saying, again, that they do everything we want them to do, or that they look to us for everything that's there, but there's a great respect back and forth for each other as we look at deploying solar and storage in the valley. So a very big evolving picture, but again, something that I think others can look at and say, hey, maybe there's something here we can take as we see the evolution in other markets.
I feel like we just captured a breaking news moment where you've commented that a utility can get along with DG contractors and come together. I'd like for you to unpack the secret to that for everyone who could benefit, which is most of the country, about what are those things where people align?
Yeah. So, and I do, and again, it's a shameless plug, but if you come to our conference, it's in Nashville this fall. It is a really, really different, interesting look at the market, because we have set it up to where it is really co-run. I mean, the TVA is one of our biggest sponsors of the conference. It's kind of like, well, how many times do you really see that across industry? But again, it's just gotten to the point where it's just the numbers. It's just the reality of what's there. And storage is really one of the big things that's unlocking a lot of that. Now that we can say, okay, well, what are we going to do at night? Well, we've got storage. What do we do with, distributed and, pain points and capacity gaps and things like that? It's like, well, storage is a big piece of that. And I think just kind of that crystal ball and where we see things going, I've already kind of let the team here know that I think it's about 3 years until, Lightwave is going to sell more in storage than we do in solar. I really see that transition happening, and I don't see it as 5 years. I see it like a 3-year future out where we're really going to make that transition.
I was on a call with one of your fellow Amicus members last week, and they said that they're already selling more storage than they are solar. Yes. And they've been a solar company for over a decade, right? And there's several other groups that we know that are already doing that. I wonder how much of it is also that maybe TVA doesn't want to install more coal plants or run more hydro plants, and they rather see the world of DG grow, or it's related to them not wanting to manage the grid further. I wonder how much of it's that they're a federally owned utility versus an investor-owned utility with certain return profiles. I think, the profile of utilities can be different across the board, but you guys have been able to, what sounds like, create a symbiotic relationship, and one that, I'd like to think other utilities can mirror and other groups can mirror, but somebody tells me that the investor-owned ones, like the ones in California, for example, have maybe different approaches to this.
They do, and I think the big deep breath is you're always going to get differences of opinion, and there's always going to be one lobby or another lobby or regional differences, things like that. But if you can get to the point where you can leave all that aside and just say, let's put all the numbers in the middle. And again, I think we as an industry have to do that too and say, okay, it doesn't work everywhere, every time. There are definitely a lot of places that we believe it does, and we want to fight for those, but there's also places that it doesn't. So we have to be realistic as well. But if everyone can do that and just bring that to the table, I think the opportunity for the solar storage solution is really there to shine, and the transmission struggles that it solves, I think, are just starting to be untapped. And that's the exciting thing for me, is that regardless of what I need this many gigawatt hours and I'm going to generate this many gigawatt hours. Okay, there's that big question that solar is a big part of. But now when I start to put the DG and the regionality in, it's like, well, shoot, I can either do this multi-million-dollar transmission upgrade, or I can put something at the end of that line. And, then we start to compete against more natural gas or, peaker generation. And I really, really feel the storage market, if we look just at the last 3 years, again, I'm not thinking in terms of 5 years in this industry because it's just changing too fast. But 3 years ago, if you look at where storage was versus where it is today, vastly different technology, vastly better price points there that I think are going to eclipse where you're going to get with the gas peaking plants on a large basis.
Yeah, I agree. I think, they like to say if you remove all the incentives, solar and storage is by far the best ROI of any of the options. Yeah. I want to take this out of the utilities for a second, which I don't think people in our industry typically do. Take California, for example. If you're a utility that initially started offering net metering, let's say a decade ago or 2 decades ago, and then fast forward a couple of years, and there is that much power flooded onto the grid that you have to maintain, and you have to balance, and you have to accept and then send back out. And I am not an engineer by training, and so I don't understand all of the power electronics needs on the grid level. I know there's a balancing mechanism, but I imagine there's a lot of maintenance and upgrading that has to happen, not to mention all of the parts of the grid that's already old and under-maintained to begin with. So the idea of having some type of net metering fee is not crazy in my mind. I think that what's crazy is the constant changing of economics, the clear policies on utilities to undermine solar, the idea that we're not doing this together. And it's not like certain utilities are going to be building massive, amounts of baseload power anyways. Right? That's just not happening anymore. So to your point, there has to be some type of solution in the middle, but there is a lack of trust between the two different parties. And that just doesn't help ultimately scale both a sustainable utility sector and a vibrant, growing distributed generation one.
No, absolutely. And just, I think, to add on to that point, the two things that have been interesting for me as part of the integrated resource planning process was, one, the demand side of the equation, just saying that, I think we in general missed that, okay, we've got all these LED lights, we've got all these energy efficiencies. Yes, we've got EVs, but generally consumption's going down, except we missed AI, and I think largely people did not realize that, yes, AI, it's great, it's awesome, ChatGPT to the rescue, but just the sheer computing power and how much it uses is immense. And that's had a big play in that whole equation for utilities then, to say that, well, gosh, I was expecting to go down. Now I've got a capacity gap, one, but then two, the other side of your equation is, they're in, 99.999% reliability, 50-year assets. So to see solar, it's like, oh, this just got here like 2 years ago. How am I going to bank on that for, a 50-year life of my career, or, the career of this plant, or longevity. So I think just time has helped as well. Now that we've got history, we've got track records and things to rely on.
I think the AI call out is a good one. The the fact that EVs haven't taken off at the growth rate that we kind of hoped or expected probably also helps them. I think I heard a stat somewhere that if everyone went EV, it's like a 40% increase to the overall grid load, like some massive number. And then, we didn't reference the crypto. I know it's more niche, but that also eats up an unusual amount of power. And so here we are thinking we can lower emissions from 1990s levels and we can continue to have more efficiency with power. And there we are with AI, crypto, and EVs. Some
and our
people hate them, some people don't.
And our grow facilities, all the lights, right?
Yeah, there you go. That's right. The future of the power sector, right?
it's ever evolving, but
Yeah.
that's again, I think the opportunity is the more we can have conversations with the EVs, with the solar, with the storage, all these pieces, we have all of these tools. What we need is the price signals, right? Because we can shift power left and right, center, depending on where it's needed. We just need better conversations around those price signals. And that's where we get into the virtual power plants and all this other opportunity there to maximize the system.
Agreed. All right, let's talk about you for a little bit. You took over for the founder, Steve Johnson, as you mentioned, and that was in 2017. I believe your first foray into solar. So I'd love to hear more about that. What was that like? How was that transition? How did it come about? Tell us what that was like for you.
Well, I got into solar at the time where solar was, not healthy, especially here in the Valley. But that's where you get into the due diligence, and it's interesting. There's a guy by the name of Tony Seba. Many of you have probably seen his stuff, but it's interesting because when we were doing the diligence on Lightwave, and I was not necessarily expecting to buy a company in 2017, but it's kind of like one of those opportunities, something I want to do in my life, but I didn't know if it was going to be right now. And in the diligence phase, it's like, can't do it, not going to do it. There's too much risk, too much. Watched what Tony had in his hour-long video for the clean disruption of energy and transportation. And literally, I can pinpoint that is the point in time where I said, I can't not do this. This is like where things are going. It all makes sense, taking kind of my whole history there. And this is the burden of being an engineer was the emotional side of me said, let's not do this. But the rational or the engineer side, the logical side was like, well, you can't not do it. You must do that. So that's when you mortgage the house, put all the savings in and say, let's go and make this thing work. And, when you do things like that in life, for the entrepreneurs, once they've quote unquote burned their ships, they have a lot of motivation to make things work. So that's where, Steve is still a partner of mine, still involved. It's a relationship that many founders and the next people don't have. He and I, mentor-mentee relationship and just great respect for each other. One of his gifts was people. He just did an amazing job of attracting and finding amazing people. So when I came to Lightwave, yes, the market was horrible. We were, on this downward trend. We had to figure it out. But it's kind of like, man, if I got all these people on the ship, we'll figure this out, because I've got a great team. And my job was just to stay out of their way and not change the culture, not mess up what they have, keep them engaged, give them kind of the view that I saw based on kind of what research and everything I had done, and then just try to remove barriers. And it's worked out well for us, the team. Like I said, I'm happy just to be on the boat. They really do all the work. They do all, not just the rowing, but most of the direction. And what happens here at Lightwave is really founded by what they and Steve did. And, we're very proud to wear our logo here. And you'll see it a lot from the Lightwave team, because I'm really big about, we have to be proud to put our logo on all of our work. And if we're not, we shouldn't do it. Or we need to do it in a way that I'm going to be proud to see every site that I've put my hands on every day. So when customers call us, they're, happy, they're excited. And we have a neat network of partners that we get to call customers that have taken care of us through the years. And that's one of the keys that I think is missed sometimes too, especially with all the bankruptcies and what we've seen in our industry that have been a lot of black eyes, is it's people concerned not about really the customer in the future. They're really concerned more about the P&L statement, balance sheet, and it just is a self-fulfilling prophecy to the wrong direction. So I don't even forget. I forget what your question was.
No, you answered it. That's good. It was a really, it's a great story. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the cultural piece.
Yep.
And I mean, from our first conversation, I've been impressed with you as a business leader. So you obviously have a very natural, humble response. And I'm not going to let you get away with it, But what I would love to hear more about your comment on culture, whether it was when you bought the business or how the business has grown to where it is now. If you were speaking with a Lightwave customer, how would you describe the culture and what makes the company unique?
It's what I mean, it's what I articulate is that maniacal about the customer and the value that, our job is to see the customer in the grocery store, at the corner store or whatever, and not say, oh my gosh, there's Bill and Joan. I want to, no, it's like big hugs and rejoice. And I'm not saying that every customer experience we have has been great, but, really, really try hard to make sure that we deliver value for the customers. And it's just been so pivotal and key to our success. It's something I learned from Steve. Steve was really big. Steve Johnson, our founder, was really big on it. It's like, yeah, I like that. We got to keep that. And it's not just that's what he did. That's who he was. And that's who I am. It's just, there's just not enough time in life to just get the sale because, it was good for me. It just is a very short-term engagement. One, but I think that's the other piece of it is that we have always been playing the long game, playing the short game. Yeah, sometimes you have to because of just, business needs or stuff like that. But it's only to get to the next hole where we're playing the drive and seeing how far down we can get the ball. So we're not playing these short little putts the whole way. So
yeah,
that's a key. And I think the other piece of that is just recognizing great people finders. It's some people in this world just have the gift where they can meet someone in 15 minutes. It's like, yes, this is a fit or not a fit. It's not even not a good person. It's just a fit, not a fit. And then there's people like me that can come in and say, okay, well, now we've got the playing pieces and the board set. Let's figure out how best to make it work.
Did you ever think you were going to become a solar CEO?
No, never. In fact, as I'm sure all your listeners know, I think every non-solar CEO peer group or group I've ever been in said, you're doing what? You're working this hard why are you doing this? In any other business or industry, it would be so much easier. But I think that's, a view into maybe a little bit more where you want to go. And I'm sure my solar brethren are going to hate me saying this, but with everything going on here recently, with tariffs and everything like that, it's kind of like, well, we've been here before. The solar business knows, it's kind of, all right, here's this playbook. Here's how we, work this, and here's how we do it. It's for us, again, talking about those other non-solar CEOs, something that we've been hardened to, and we just know how to play this game. So not saying it's going to be easy or necessarily, all beneficial or anything like that, but at least we know how to take the next steps forward and try to work with both customers, vendors, and kind of industry to figure it out.
Yeah. I joke with friends and family members and even some of our team that building a company in the solar industry, if you can do it successfully, you can take on probably any other industry.
Anything.
And when I was, before Scanify, I was in a banking role, and I actually had a similar story to you where, I was meeting the founder of Scanify, who was really building out on the R&D side, and we got the mortgage on our house, and I was working a good banking job, and then 2 days later I quit it, and it was kind of like a burn the boats. Like there's no turning back, So a very similar emotional leap, honestly. But something inside you was like, this is the right decision, and I think
that's what. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, you and I have talked since, Scanify, I forget what version when we kind of got into it. And, I credit you as well with having that future vision, but you were able to, because I was peppering you with it. It'd be great if it did this, 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 and this, it's like, yes, Chris, I hear you. It's on the list, but, you have to step into it. And I think, the two things I take out of that and I credit you with is you can grow too fast. Growth can kill companies just as fast as no business. But you were very, I think, deliberate with what you guys did there. But two, just having the vision, in the long-term vision. If you know where we're going to be 10 years from now, it's a lot easier to make decisions today because I know if I'm getting closer or further away from that. So.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, Scalefly's got an awesome team. It's got a great founder, and similar to how I think your dynamic is privileged to have joined a great founder of a business and as a partner. I think for us, there's a North Star and some way you're going to get to it, but you never really know the way. Because if you think you know the way, especially in solar, you're definitely not going to get there.
It's definitely wrong. This is too easy. I've messed up something, right?
I used to joke in my banking role, because we were doing a lot of project finance transactions and also looking at different financing vehicles, that people in the renewable energy space will find any way possible to create clean energy. There was the era of yield cos. There's all these crazy tax equity structures. There's RECs and other incentives that come and go. And there was forays into, remember, Solyndra and heliostatin towers and parabolic troughs. And, it's like, we have tried everything possible to power from the sun. And what did we end up with? We're just going to put glass in the desert. But hey, we'll do whatever it takes in solar,
and it works, right? I mean,
it does.
But, putting all that together, and I think, getting to some of the early questions and about the TVA and where we are now. And for like the listeners, if I had to convey, what have we learned? One of the biggest things that I see, and I see it in some of my amicus brethren, and I just see it in the industry in general, is that we've kind of arrived, to your point, right? We've gotten here, but now that we've gotten here, we have to be very deliberate about saying, I don't care why people go solar. And it's important because so many of us have been, fighting this battle for so long, and the why was and is so near and dear to our hearts. But now that solar has become bigger mainstream, different people have a different why. And so now, the focus is on the what. And that was one of the big things early on with Lightwave that we had to change was more focused on the what. What, we care that people go solar and storage. The why, hey, is it left? Is it right? Is it center? I don't care. We just care that people go that way. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I think I've learned over the years and try to convey to others now that we've gotten to this point in the industry.
Yeah, I've heard also about people pitching solar as not an ROI anymore, right? Don't talk to me about payback. Like, let's talk about quality of life and the value of it, right? Obviously, it's clean energy, and obviously you're going to save on your utility bill. But let's also talk about you're not going to have a blackout anymore, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to be worried about the food going bad in your fridge, or will your medical equipment work in a storm? Can you put a price on that? I mean, of course, you have to be able to afford solar, and there's financing to help with that. But ultimately, and I've heard this similar narrative both in your market, but also in a market like in Utah, where battery attachment rates are higher, or increasingly in Texas because of the storms that have occurred, or the wildfires in California. We have one colleague on our team who lives outside of LA. And over the last year, he is the only house on his block with power the entire time. And he jokes that Scanifly is so lucky that the engineering team keeps humming along because he's our engineering leader. We're just like, I just hope you're safe, But I guess talk to us about that new way of framing solar, which is about the value of it, not necessarily from a dollars and cents, but a lifestyle.
So if everyone made economic decisions every day in what they did, everyone would be living in pole barns, right? But we don't. Every municipal building, every house is not a pole barn. It's not a prefab metal building. The cheapest, easiest way to enclose space. No, we've got brick. We've got ornate statues. We've got non-ROI decisions each one of us make every day. So I think that's part of the problem with us, the industry, is we've had to sell it on ROI, or we sold it on ROI for so long that getting out of that and realizing there's a lot of other benefits to it is difficult. So yes, to your point, we highlight that every day. And residentially, again, our attachment rate's at 100%, and that's what we say. It's like, hey, you've got your own microgrid. I mean, it is crazy how complex some of these systems are. And I really, again, credit the team with, they've done these, solar storage, utility, backup generator interface, yet, multi uh, input system, but they've done it in a way that Mr. and Mrs. Jones can control it. That's pretty cool to say that, people that are having problems just turning on their TV now have this super complicated microgrid that's working in the background is a cool place for the industry to get, that we've got the products and ability to put stuff like that together. Again, shift now to what can we do for CNI? What can we do for utilities? What can we do with VPPs? It's kind of, that thing where, and I'm going to regret saying this too, but if we can do all this at the residential scale, wow, it gets a lot easier at the business commercial scale, because it's people that are used to equipment and operating it versus the residential where it's just got to work all the time. So real excited about that transition, and how, to your point, people are seeing it now as a lifestyle. And, what we term it as grid independent. I'm not off grid. Off grid is a whole different lifestyle and a whole different thing, but I'm grid independent. I'm choosing to use the grid when I want it at home, not because I necessarily need it. And my hope is that the utilities and local power companies start to really latch onto that, not as a threat, but as an opportunity too, to say that, hey, in the TVA region here in 2023, had to curtail demand because of Winter Storm Elliott that was just so cold, it really taxed the system, and they needed people to shed load. It's like, hey, we can do that. No problem. Just give us the signal again, and we can help with that. So it's all the way back around. The more we can work together and, kind of take the preconceived ideas out and just put all this on the table, I think we'll develop some really neat solutions moving forward.
I want to capture that moment and combine two stories that you just shared, because I think it's actually a particularly special moment, right? You said that Lightwave is unique because, and culturally, because you're a company that is okay seeing your customers at the grocery store and not just walking away, but giving them a hug and saying, how are you doing as a person? And I actually believe I heard DJ, you had a sales, say that same story. So clearly there's a connection between how all of you guys work, because you've both said it independent of the other. And then the other side of it, you said, we now have the technological ability and the economic side as well, but most importantly, the values and the lifestyle, the opportunity to let someone control their own power and be grid independent. And the fact that you have that opportunity for a homeowner or a business owner to do that now, where the cost does make sense in a lot of cases, it really does. And you're a group that doesn't shy away from having that relationship is, I think, quite unique. I think it's quite special. And I give you guys a lot of credit for that. And I think more groups will hopefully get to that place and be those stalwarts in their markets the way Lightwave has grown to be.
No, I appreciate that. And it's not without a lot of brain damage that we got there, and some customers that were willing victims on the beginning, especially of the storage front. But, I think just to, again, pull it back around, one of the things I say, it's like, installing it at your in-laws' house. I don't want to go there for Thanksgiving and hear about how the system's not working or it's not working right or whatever. It's like, no, install every system like that. Where we go to Thanksgiving dinner, it's like, yeah, let's go off grid. Let's do it right now, and be confident in that and excited about it. And I think if we get there again as an industry, that's a really special place to be here. And again, not everyone can do it. Our market is maybe a little bit different, and we do benefit from some very affluent places that have helped us kind of get there. But I think as technology improves, the price points get lower, more and more can start to enjoy that same benefit.
Now, I understand that you're into karate. That's probably an awful joke. But
no, that's a huge part of the Six Sigma piece, because I've got
tell us more about that. Tell us more about that.
My black belt on the shelf here. Yeah. And as everyone, and I didn't know for like years. That's, I think, why people were afraid of me. Maybe that's why they listened to me. I don't know, but no, I know no karate. I would go down just like that.
Tell us about it. What does that mean? Why did you get into that? How do you use it?
It is at Caterpillar, as many big industrial companies do, have different processes. So you might have heard of Lean or Six Sigma, Kaizen, all of these things. Six Sigma is one of those that looks at defects and looks at process improvements and says that, hey, if we can get to Six Sigma, so we can get to 3.4 parts per million failure rate, we have now gotten this process to a point that we need to focus on the next process because this one has been optimized as good as it can get. And so it's a data-based, not a database, but a data-based view of the world to where you take a lot of the subjective elements out and you just get down to show me the numbers. It's kind of like, yeah, I hear that that's what we think it is, but help me with the numbers and collections that get there. And, maybe as characterized here, it is maniacal on voice of customer. Everything in Six Sigma starts with what is the voice of the customer and what are the critical customer requirements. And I think you take someone like me who's really focused on people pleasing and focused on the customer and experience and all that. You add the training, and then, we give, the team here and the opportunity to take that out is kind of all those pieces put together. So it's something that, once you learn it, once you're into it, you don't like use it to a T every day, but it's forever kind of changed your thought process and how you think about things. And obviously it has for me, and I've kind of enjoyed that background of my life. So
I imagine that helped with your transition to solar, where process is pretty critical in terms of staying focused and scaling. So thank you for sharing. You've mentioned the Amicus Cooperative a couple of times. So did I. What is that group, and how do you guys play a role in it?
So Amicus is a group. It's at its nature a purchasing cooperative. So we're all members of the purchasing cooperative, but we are a group that is highly, highly selective. And so you take, us and Lightwave and what we do in Tennessee Valley. What if we've done it all right? We're saying is that if you come to Amicus and I've got a project out in Arizona right now that I can go to the Amicus member out there and say, hey guys, can you install this at my parents' house there? And I can trust that it's going to be installed to the same level of care that I would install it here. But now you've got the local company there that knows all the local regulations, knows how things are done correctly, not just how they're done quickly, knows the inspectors, can get the utility, get all that done. So it's a group of us now that I think we're a little over 90 companies strong that does solar and does what I want to say, does solar correctly, does it the right way. And now we also purchase together so we can get panels at the same price as some of the largest companies out there. So we don't have the disadvantage of saying, yeah, we install solar the best, but we can't get modules as cheap as that other guy. So, it forces a price point. Not saying that we're going to be, the cheaper or cheapest, but again, I think we're the best value because we're focused on companies that have been around for a while, that are going to be around after the sale to support it and make sure that we're upholding kind of solar as that future technology and making sure that we're taking the brand of solar and doing right by that. So it's been a great, just a great group of people. And again, I welcome anyone listening. If you're looking for, a company to do solar, just go to amicussolar.com and go to the members. You can see who all's there. And we've also formed an O&M cooperative for the same thing. So you can look at that. But again, very selective on who we bring in because we want the best people there to not only take the values and put them in the market, but we also share ideas. So we're not all learning these lessons independently. We're learning them together, and we can benefit from each other's mistakes and each other's knowledge.
Yeah, we at Scanify work with, I think, about 24 of the Amicus companies at this point around the country. And we really admire the thoughtfulness of how they approach their process. They might not be the fastest to make decisions, but that's ultimately, I think, for the betterment of their organization and the industry. And they typically have fantastic reputations in their local markets. They've been doing it for a long time and the right way. And most of the business are referrals, which just underscores further how they really ingrain themselves in their communities and do business the right way. The more we can get, I know you guys, I think, are somewhat territorially distributed, so there probably is a saturation point at some stage, but the more we can get in that co-op, it's probably the better for all of us. So
it is, but even to that point, we do compete against each other. We've grown to the point that we compete. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's one of those things where if I lose to someone that I know is going to cut corners and not do it right, or it's just like, oh, I'm going to have to go back and do it the right way in 5 years, explain to the customer why it wasn't done right from the start. That's tough. That's a tough loss. But when it's mano a mano, and I know that either way they're going to get a great system, but man, I missed it. That forces us to be better ourselves too. So it's a healthy competition there, especially if we can set better market dynamics to say, no, this is how solar is done. So we don't necessarily shy away from competition, but we do obviously like to kind of spread out and get more of a geographic disbursement of our membership.
Yeah. Final question for you. You were gracious in talking about your journey from Caterpillar and PHG, and that big decision of like buying Lightwave and going forward from there. What advice would you give an owner of a solar contractor right now? How should they get started, or how should they be approaching this current market dynamic?
I think, the few opportunities that come up is, again, I'm a firm believer, all in on, I see where the future is, regardless of politics. There's just like, I've seen the numbers, I've seen it from the utility side, from our side, see where things are going. So you have to have faith and, the vision to see this is where things are going. That being said, diversity is also, important in so many ways, not just the people we have on the teams, but diversity in business, and making sure that I'm not betting just on one thing, that if resi's down, I've got commercial opposite sides, but we also have this huge O&M opportunity too. We've got all this solar that has been out there for a while. Why not, grow that and make sure that everyone is getting value from their existing systems that are there as well. So there's those pieces. And then obviously what we highlighted big time is storage. Storage is the next piece of the puzzle, and maybe the biggest piece of the puzzle that's going to unlock a lot more storage or a lot more solar to go with it. So those are my key points with anyone I'm talking to, is make sure you've got 3 or 4 prongs there. And as my team, you might have heard from DJ, we like to have 3 ways to win, because one of those ways is going to drop out. So let's have 3 ways to win. We don't have to bet the farm on just this anymore. Let's get some diversity in our business. That way we can make it through these tougher times there and see vision to the other side.
Thank you, Chris. You and I met, I think, over 5 years ago, and we've kept a continual dialogue, and I've learned a lot from you, and I really appreciate the chance for you to continue to share those learnings with anyone who's going to listen to this podcast, and hopefully a bunch of your customers who see some of these clips. I think
this is not, and I'm going to say this is not prompted. If you haven't checked out Scanify, do, because it changed our business way back then. And that was even, like I said, at the earlier versions of the software that didn't do near what they did today. But it was one of those, when you talk about value for the customer and safety of our employees and just the struggles we were having, it has been transformational for our business in the relationship we have with our customers there with the software. So appreciate what you guys do. Keep doing it.
We really appreciate it. I still remember that call where you came to me because you had a foot-long revision that occurred that we can never talk about. And you said, if we can solve this, and you had your whole team in front of you, said, we're doing it. And I said, all right, we think we can solve it. And the rest is history.
We missed it by like 10 feet. I mean, it was just like, how did, it was just, again, it was one of those things where it was, there was weather, there were multiple people, and, a decimal point, whatever. It's like, wow, we need to never do that again. And then I also remember the call when yours truly did a flight, and you said, I don't know who the pilot was, but they need training. It's like, all right. That's when I stopped flying the drone myself and let the professionals do it, right?
Well, hopefully you've had only perfect accuracy ever since then, and
much better.
Yep, and you know that you always have an honest partner in Scanify, even if it's direct.
Exactly. It was good. It was good learning.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining me. I mean, some great takeaways in terms of, trying to collaborate with your utility and build a market that works for everyone. Look to the future regardless of politics. Operate in a way that you're able to see your customers in the grocery store and not run away. And that being an important bellwether in a very human way. Diversify your business so you can win multiple ways over. And storage is probably the biggest piece of the puzzle. And 100% attachment rates is not that far off. So thank you for what you guys do in your market with Amicus, and you as a person trying to elevate our industry and help all of us get better in the solar market. So Chris, thanks so much for everything, and hopefully we do this again.
Anytime. Thank you for everything you guys do, and have a wonderful day. All right.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.